Hey everybody, my name is Bryce Young. I'm the president and founder of Warm Audio, and today I want to talk to you about a new pedal we've got called the Warm Bender. I'm super excited about this pedal release. Now, I think some of you might say, oh, it's a Bender style. I've seen a Bender style before. Well, you haven't seen one like this, and let me explain why. It's not just the features. We have added some extra features, and I'm going to get into that, but it's also the components. There are Bender-style circuits out there that are saying they are tone benders that don't use legitimate germanium transistors. Why don't they use germaniums? Well, germaniums are no longer made. We were able to find new old stock germaniums that are in this circuit. Not only that, we've got multiple germanium circuits in the same pedal that are using different germanium transistors from each other, which is pretty exciting. I mean, it'd be one thing to say, hey, we've got different germanium circuits within one pedal, but they're all really the same transistors and they're gonna sound the same anyways. No, we actually have different models of germaniums for different circuit settings in a single pedal. Why do I get excited about a Bender style pedal? Well, I talked to you about the germanium transistors. Obviously that's exciting, but the tones that this puts out comes from an era of music that is huge. The late 60s, early 70s. I mean, I don't think there's many people that will refute some of the most exciting music and inspirational music that inspired even music today came out during that era. You've got famous people like Jeff Beck, Pete Townshend from The Who. You've got Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. All use this style of pedal. Being an electronics manufacturer, I really like the history of the Bender style of pedal because it came from the need of giving people the sound they were already chasing. So people were looking for ways to create high energy, distorted guitars, sometimes keyboards as well. And they were creating that by modifying their guitar amps in many cases. So there was a need to have this style of pedal because people were already chasing it and creating it on their own, and manufacturers realized, hey, we can create a circuit that gives people the sound that they're already producing on their own. What I love about the germanium sound is it gives you high energy, high attack, high distortion, but without sounding harsh. Still sounds musical. We've got multiple settings on this pedal, and I'll get to those in a second, and some of them are more aggressive than others, but even the most aggressive, it still sounds musical. It still sounds warm. And I think a distortion that sounds warm is one that anybody can fall in love with. Germanium transistors, as I mentioned, give you a really warm sound, but they do sound a little bit different from model to model. Some used an OC76 style of transistor. Some used an SFT337. Some used an OC75. And they all sound similar. They all sound germanium, but a little bit different. And some had different shelving too. So some would actually cut off the low end, create a high pass filter to be a little bit more of a piercing guitar sound. Some had bigger, deeper bottom ends. It's very fascinating. And we wanted to have multiple circuits all in one pedal to give you different options. Why not? So let me talk about the sound profile differences between the three various benders that we have in this pedal. So you've got what we call the NOS 76 setting. And what that is NOS stands for new old stock, meaning transistors that are new, they haven't been used, they haven't been inserted into a circuit before, but they're old stock because they were manufactured a long time ago. The 76 setting, the NOS 76 setting, uses an OC76 transistor. It also uses an SFT337 germanium transistor. So it's a 2-transistor germanium fuzz circuit, and it has a very, more of a cutting sound than the 3-transistor version. Part of that cutting sound is because it has a high pass filter, rolls off the lows a little bit in the guitar comes out, pierces a little bit more, but still has a very warm germanium sound. Now the NOS 75, what is that? So NOS, again, new old stock, it's germanium transistors. This circuit uses 3 OC75 germanium transistors, has a bigger, beefier bottom end. It has more gain than the 2-transistor circuits. What I mean by more gain is you can drive harder and harder. And so I'm not actually referring to the output level and the amount of output gain, but the gain within the distortion circuit, you can just keep distorting deeper and deeper. Whereas the OC76 setting is a little bit, you can get some gritty sounds, but you can't go into real crazy deep hard distortion. And then the Silcon setting. So we thought, hey, one of the most famous and probably most commonly used Bender style circuits uses 3 transistors, 3 germaniums, 3 OC75s. Why don't we make a circuit for the heck of it that uses 3 transistors, but they're silicon? So it's a very similar circuit to the NOS 75 setting, but it's silicon transistors. That's going to give you a more modern sound. It's going to sound a little bit sharper. It's going to cut a little bit harder, and it's going to be more of a modern heavy metal rock and roll sound. So outside of the transistors, the construction is very similar to what you'd expect in a vintage style Bender. So we use the same kind of paint, the powder coated paint that they used back in the day. It's really, really strong, very hard to scratch, very durable. It's all hand assembled. So through hole assembly, all the resistors, transistors, everything's inserted by hand. It uses all carbon transistors, just like the original. All film capacitors, etc. So it's exactly what you'd expect from a component standpoint to be in a vintage style Bender circuit. All right, so let's talk about the feature set on the Warm Bender. And I think many of you know what each knob and button does, so I don't have to go in extreme detail, but there are a couple things I want you to know about. So first off, the construction and the size of the pedal, we made a big deal about that. We know that pedal board space is important to you, and we made sure to keep it a size that's very similar to other pedals. But we didn't want to change the shape, so we kept that classic shape, which we think looks awesome. It uses the same very durable, hard to scratch powder coated paint as well. So let me, before we talk about the front panel controls, let's talk about what's on the back near the jacks. You've got your input and output jacks near the top, so that prevents them from having to be on the sides and take up too much pedal board space on the sides. We've got a 9-volt center negative inlet on the back here as well. And then we also have a little exciting secret Easter egg feature called the sag switch. And what the sag switch does is when you flip it into the up position, it drops the voltage going to the transistors down to just 6 volts from 9 volts. The benefit to this is anybody that's played with voltage going to their pedals, and there are some power supplies that allow you to modify the amount of power going to your pedals, you can get different tones and some cool, interesting sounds out of a pedal by giving it less voltage. The sag switch setting, the way that I hear it is on the silicon setting, it's really obvious. There's actually a gating effect that occurs. So the silicon transistors are like, hey, where's my voltage? I need it. And so you play and it kind of breaks up and then fades out and gates. It's really cool. On the germanium settings, the distortion sounds different, but it's not as obvious of the gating effect. On the front panel, we've got the obvious on and off switch to turn on and engage the effect. When it is off, you are getting a true bypass. We've added an LED indicator here, which wasn't on the original Bender style pedal. We've got your attack and your level knobs, which are expected to be on any Bender style circuit. The attack is going to turn up the amount of distortion. The level is going to be the amount of output leaving the pedal. On some of the early Bender circuits, the output knob, when fully cranked, gave you just as much signal as you get in bypass mode. So you weren't getting any additional gain out of the level. It was more of actually like a pad. It was padding the amount of signal leaving. Later versions of this circuit started to give the output level additional gain. I think we all love the idea of getting a little bit of extra boost out of our pedals. Why not? If you don't need it, turn it down. So we decided to adopt that style of Bender circuit that gives you additional gain. So you can get quite a bit of output. In general, depending on how loud your guitar is up, I find that at about 12 o'clock on the level knob is at about unity or the same amount of gain you get in bypass mode. I've been experimenting a lot myself with the level knob. If I crank that bad boy all the way up and hit my amp really hard, I can get all kinds of interesting tones. So I dial in the tone that I'm looking for on the Bender, but then I can crank that output and depending on your amp and how much level your amp can take, it starts to shape the tone in completely different ways. So One thing that a Bender circuit doesn't have is a tone knob. Well, I get that actually from the output level. Depending on how much signal is hitting the amp, really starts to affect the tone and either cut off the highs or bring back the highs. Lastly, on the pedal, we've got the version knob. Call it the version knob because you're choosing which version of Bender style circuit you're going to be listening to and which one the electricity is running through for the moment. And you've got those 3 versions at a click of a switch. It's just a rotary switch, pretty simple 3-position rotary switch. And the first version is the NOS 76. Second version is the NOS 75. And then the last one is the new modern Silcon version that we've created for this pedal. Thanks for taking a moment to learn about the Warm Bender with me. We are extremely excited about this launch. If you have more questions, want to hear sound samples, watch videos, check it out at warmaudio.com.